Coming up next, I have one of the nicest conditions receivers that I think I've seen. This one here looks like it just came out of the box. It is in that good of condition. Not as much as a single scratch on this vintage piece of Technics equipment. And this one's coming in for, well, it's coming with no sound, but I've got lots of room to work on this one. Let's check it out. This is a Technics SA700 receiver, 100 watts per channel. And this one is in about as close of condition to perfect as I have seen. One little tiny mark right there. It's beautiful. Check this out. I haven't even plugged this unit in yet, so I have no idea what to expect. I assume that it's probably going to require some type of service, but I just wanted to show you guys the cabinet before we tear in and service this one and see what it requires. So I'm going to connect it now. Before I do, let's take a look at the speaker connections on this, because these are a little bit different than a lot of receivers of this era. As you can see, this one used proper binding posts. You put the wire in and then tighten it down, and you could put a 16 gauge wire in here, no problem. Actually, probably a little better. You could probably go for a 14 gauge wire, but 16 for sure would fit into here. Unlike a lot of receivers of the day, which use these crappy little spring tensioned quick release where you pushed them down and stuck the wire in and the spring held it in place. These ones make an absolute positive connection on the wire. So I'm just checking the switches. That one seems about, oh, it's okay, it's sticking a bit. Some of these switches are sticking, they haven't been turned on and off. Okay, the power switch is stuck on, it won't turn off. It's just, so likely when I plug this thing in, it's going to turn on immediately, because that switch won't turn off. Just want to make sure that everything's turned down and I'm not going to get a surprise here. And I will plug it into the dim bulb and see whether I get a bright bulb or whether it kind of comes on in a normal state. So let's take a look at the dim bulb tester. I'm in the current reduced mode. In other words, the dim bulb is active. Okay, that's a good sign. That means that there's no short. Because you saw the light come on momentarily there, and then it went off. So there's no short circuits, so that generally means I can flip on full power. As there's nothing that's gone bad. Nothing bad has happened yet. I do see that it is in safety mode. If we look at the front here, the safety light is on. So we may have a fault. So we are in a fault condition on this amplifier. So I guess the top's coming off. There's two more in the back on this that need to come out. Oh, damn, the customer's going to be pissed. I stripped the screw. What else needs to come off on this thing? Got the screws out. Why is the top cover not lifting off? It should. Oh, there we go. Just push it back and it lifts off. The side covers are actually don't come off on this unit. The top lifts off. Interesting design. Solid wood. So this is held in place by just the two screws on the back. The screws on the side don't need to come off on this one to open it up, so I will put them back on. But that's quite an unusual top. Take out the two screws in the back and just give it a push and it lifts off. Check out the output transistors. There's 4 per bank. 4 2SD 427A and 4 2SB 557A. So I got 4 PMPs and 4 NPNs. 2 per channel. So they're paralleled with each other. So the fact that the amp stayed in protection is an indicator that there may be a fault in the output circuit. We may have DC voltage, or it could be just a blown fuse or a bad connection. So I guess the first things first is we'll check the fuses and see if any of the fuses are popped. All the fuses check okay. I'm going to pull the bottom off. I think the bottom goes off on this one, so we can start checking some voltages. Look for any DC voltage over at the speaker relay, for example. See whether it's a protection problem or whether it's an amplifier problem. This unit was built back in the day when devices were actually meant to be serviced. So it has a nice panel on the bottom, which I need to get at anyway because the power switch isn't working, and I like to get that freed up if it's just stuck. There's a view from the bottom. Got 3 main boards. Got the control board, main tuning board, and the amplifier boards over here with the outputs, of course, right on these 2 sets of heat sinks. And they can be removed. The screws that hold the heat sinks in, they can be removed for service if need be. I'm hopeful that the transistors are not blown though, because finding original replacements for these would not be easy, because the old TO3 styles, they've been out of production for a very long time, and finding new ones these days is like almost impossible. First things first, I'm going to check to see if there's any DC voltage on the amplifier that's causing a problem. I don't think it's a power amp problem on this, and there's a reason why I don't think that, and I'm not telling you guys the reason why just yet. If you're observant, you will have already observed what I've already observed. Does that make sense? Anyway, let's check and see what we have here. So we've got our supply, 55 volts. Our bias, 0.6. This will be the emitter, or the base for the other transistor. Right? We've got no DC on either of them. These are the bias for the other 2 transistors and the supply. So the bias is correct. There's nothing on the emitter, so there's no DC voltage. So we don't have an amplifier problem on this unit. But we do definitely have a problem, and it's not producing any sound. Now, I don't know if you've noticed what I noticed, but none of the lights are lighting up. None of the display lights, or for the tuner, are lighting up to light up the display. So I'm thinking we have a power supply problem somewhere in the regulator. One of the low voltage supplies isn't working. We're missing a voltage to the preamp, and the unit is going into protection, because the display light should be on when I'm in, well, it should be on when I'm in tuner mode for sure. Some of them, they don't turn it on when you're in phono or auxiliary, they turn the light out, but in tuner mode it should certainly be lit up, and it's not in either mode. And it looks like the speaker relay is kicking in, actually. Yeah, the speaker relay is kicking in. You see it? Watch when I unplug it. So I apply power, and the relay kicks in. And now it's off. So we have a preamp problem on this unit, I think. Well, I know, because none of the lights are lighting up. So there's got to be a power supply problem on here somewhere in the regulator. And the regulator is on this board here. Fuses are all good, I checked them, but there's got to be one of these regulators down here, or even capacitors down here, that are in pretty sad shape. I think that probably the first thing to do is to change out some of these old caps. If I've got the values, I should have. 100 microfarad at 63 volts, 220 at 50 volts, 220 at 35. Let's see what I've got in stock. Now I'm taking a slightly different approach on this specific piece of equipment, because the owner of this one has authorized me to replace any parts that need to be replaced, and they're not concerned about what it costs. So obviously they don't want me to spending $500 on it, but I've been told that any capacitors and so forth that need to be replaced, I can change on this. I don't have to call them and say it's going to be X number of dollars. I'm just told, fix it. I like it when I get a blank check where I can do what I have to do and not have to worry, because this one's not going to someone who's just going to turn around and flip it. This is actually going back to someone who's using it in their system. It hasn't been used in a long time, and it was their parents, and now the son wants to use it. So I got a little more leeway on this than I do on a lot of stuff. So I'm going to change out those 6 caps. I've got some Rubicons here to put in place. We're going to change those out and see if that solves any of the issues with it staying in protection. I'll change all those ones out in the power supply on this, just because they probably do need to be changed. Of course, I use my regular finger technique, where I shine a light on it and I point my finger around and look on the other side so I can locate the parts easily. This is going to be a little more of a challenge because it's got this big metal plate in the way, which might be in the way for some of them, so it might be a little bit more difficult to get to some of them, but I'm sure we'll figure it out. So that's this one right there. Just touching one of the caps. Should be one right here that needs to be changed out. So let's get changing parts. The first one I pulled is not bad. It's 100 microfarad, 63 volts. And we'll take a look at the ESR and the capacity of this cap. So the ESR is, make sure my meter's zeroed out, which it is. Okay, ESR, if I can get my probes to connect, is 0.4. 100 at 63 volts should be 0.3 maximum, and this is at 0.4. So it's starting to go bad. It's being changed, but it's not the one that's causing the problem. If we look at the capacity, it's 111 microfarads. So that's the first one that will change out. But that's not going to be the one that's causing problems if it is in fact being caused by a cap. One thing that's important to remember when you're working on a vintage amp like this, the boards are not marked which way the capacitors are, polarity wise. So when you remove them, make damn sure you note what way they went in, because they don't mark the boards with silkscreen on units of this vintage. So I'm changing them one at a time for that reason. I am using my headlight when I change out these caps. Makes it easier to spot them. I know I'm going to catch it from the guy that likes to voice his opinion about not liking lights that have a spot, and he likes his little flashlight that's got a focusable lens. Well, to him, I tell you, a headlight like this with a bright spot, no, I'm not turning it on full. I've got it on medium power. It has low, medium, and high, and I'm running it on medium power. It certainly makes it a lot easier to see what you're doing when you're working around the back side of something like this. It certainly makes it a lot easier to use a head-mounted light, and I just happen to like the spot because it lets me focus on what I'm working on. Anyway, so far I've changed out 3. I don't see any that are leaking at this point. I don't see any that have any physical signs that they're leaking. Maybe this one here, but even this one doesn't look bad. Anyway, we're going to change them all out. After changing those caps, it's still got no sound. I am picking up a signal though. The lights apparently are all burned out. The tuning meter works, as you can see. The tuning meter works, so it is tuning in a signal, and the stereo light is lighting up, but I've got no sound on any input. I got an auxiliary plugged into it as well. No sound on any input, but the tuner actually is working. I've got the tape outputs plugged into my other amplifier. I just want to check the switches here. So this is going to my other amp. Very dirty switches. I wonder if that's part of the problem. Ah. We have very dirty switches on this. The tape monitor switches are in really rough shape. Let's just try cleaning those and see whether I get any sound. guess I got to pull the faceplate off this to get to the switches. So we'll remove the knobs and first, so I can get the screws out. There's some I got to get this apart to get to the power switch anyway that's acting up, so I got to take this off anyway. 2 screws on the bottom, 2 screws on the top. I think this, yeah, the nut doesn't have to come off this. Actually, those knobs probably didn't have to come off, just these other ones. They may not even need to come off on this, just the screws. Oh, the knobs probably didn't even need to come off on this. Looks like they fit right through. So I can put the knobs back on. Okay, now I can get into the switches themselves and get some cleaner into them. Power's not on obviously right now. We'll put it on and see whether I've solved any issues. See if we get any sound. Yeah, see we got bad switches. That's our fault on this one. These ones are in probably the worst shape that I've seen. Volume control needs to be cleaned too. We'll do that next. Volume control can be got to from here. I think I can get to it in here. One thing I've learned is that the safety light actually is on when it's not in protection. That's kind of odd. Usually you would think, you know, if there's a fault, the light's going to show up. In this case, the light turns on when the relay clicks in. If we watch, when I power it up, the safety light will come on just as it clicks. So that's an indicator that it's working. I got that one totally wrong, didn't I? How's the radio working? Yeah, I've got to turn muting off. Sound bad, does it? Oh, this would be very welcome in my system. Holy crap, this sounds good. Check out the power meters on it too. It's got blinky lights for those that like blinky lights. red, it's 30 watts. That's the first one for 30, is red. I don't think the meters are accurate because the last one says 200 watts and I don't think this amplifier would push 200 watts. It's rated at 100 watts per channel. Now these can be peak power too. It's rated 100 watts continuous, but it's got lots of power, that's for sure. It's got a good sized power transformer in here. Still a bit of dirt on that control. I got to clean that control a little bit more. Let's just check the other controls out. Balance control sounds clean. Got to clean that volume control a little more. Let's just do that. Still got to get some more contact cleaner into the switches. As you can see, this one's still a bit noisy, so we'll just spray some more. This is what happens when equipment doesn't get used for 30 odd years and it just sits. In a perfect world, I'd be replacing the switch, but I'm never going to find an original switch for one of these. So we got to clean it up. It might take a little while to get this switch perfectly clean. I think I got it now. Oh, almost. Almost. It'll get better. Just got to keep working it back and forth to clean it, polish up the contacts. I can't get into the switch any other way. The switches themselves are sealed from the top. So the only way to get into the switch is to actually fire the cleaner in where the lever goes in. It's a lever switch that operates a slide switch back and forth on the inside. So the only place to get into it is actually from the front because the entire switch itself, besides being difficult to reach, it's all sealed. I could do the same as I did with that Lexman. Pop a little hole in the back of it and pump some cleaner in, but I can't access the switch to do it. I'd have to take out the entire tuning assembly. All this is in the way to get at that switch because it's on a circuit board that's in behind here. Not a very easy one to get to. Got to clean the record out switch. That's what's going to my other amplifier here. As you can hear, it's also bad, so I got to get some more cleaner into that switch as well. Use half a can of Neutral to clean this thing. This is the record out. And I'll check the other positions to make sure that it works. I'm just going to show you guys the ESR on the caps that I pulled out. I changed 8 of them. This is a 220. 0.2. Okay, it's a 35 volt. So 0.17 would be considered good for a new one. This is a 100 microfarad, 63 volts. 0.4, a little bit, starting to go up a bit, but 0.1, it's another 100. See if there's any that are 0.1. You see, these are all testing good. None of them are bad. I'll check the capacitance on them in a minute. 0.3. 0.2. 0.3. 0.2. They're all very good. Remember, these are, 45 years old. If we look at the actual capacitance, this one's a 220. $290, okay. Remember, these are like 20% tolerance, so this is a 100. Probably going to measure about a 140, 130. Okay, that one's right on, 103. $237, that's a 220. This one's a 100. $110. Another 100. $116. All right, 20% tolerance, so it could be as high as 120 and they'd be considered totally normal. $110. $103. $100, right on the money. So all the caps I changed, ESR wise they're fine, capacity wise they're all within spec. None of them were bad. I've changed them out as good measure just because they're filters in the power supply and it can't hurt to change them. But really there was nothing wrong with them. And I'm not going to change any of the other ones. Even though I have a blank check to write on this thing. I can't see any point. I've changed out all the ones that really are critical. The unit's sounding good. Got to clean up the controls, and then the fellow that owns this will have a good amplifier that will last him for a good long time. Now, some people might say just change them all anyway, but when I can go through a handful of them, and 8 of them that I pulled all measure within spec, the rest of them are also going to be measuring within spec. I don't see any that are bulging or any that are leaking, right? They're all looking to be pretty good. So maybe this one here, that one there might be signs of a little bit of leakage. But other than that, all the ones that would normally fail, the ones that are dealing with the higher voltages in the power supply, the ones that you would expect to go bad, have all been changed out. Switch is now good. Famous last words. And that's the output for tape monitor. Loudness. Don't hear any noise. These are the tone control switches. Crossover. Again, I don't hear any noise on them. I'll give them a shot of cleaner because I haven't cleaned these ones yet. So I will give these switches a shot of cleaner, but these ones here were the ones that were in really, really bad shape. So I'll just proceed to give these other switches all a shot, give them a cleaning while I've got it here. I gotta fix that power switch too because it's stuck on. Whether the switch itself is shot or whether it's just stuck. That I'll have to check out. Like when I turn it off, it doesn't click. I'm going to pull the power switch to check it, see why it's not switching. I may have to get a new switch, but that again might be difficult. But we'll see whether I can fix this switch or not. The switch should lift out. Get a few of the wire ties and I can get some slack so I can pull the switch out to see what's wrong with it. Should be able to pop the switch open by just lifting up the little clips here that hold it together, and the switch should pop apart, and then I can see why it's sticking. Internally, are the contacts welded together? That's what I think probably is what's happened, is that the contacts themselves have welded themselves together and it's not toggling. Most likely what's happened on it. So the switch is toggled by a spring that transfers energy from the toggling mechanism through plastic, of course, and it toggles this piece back and forth. Just going to lift this piece apart and see why it's not toggling. It's probably the contacts are welded together, which is quite common on these type of switches. What it does is it toggles this piece, and this piece is sticking there. Yeah, you can see the switch is kind of burned pretty good. It's just kind of burned black. But that's what it does, is it toggles this little switch piece back and forth, which makes contact with the other part of the switch down here. And you can see where the contacts have been burning. But finding another identical switch like this might be a challenge. If I can make the switch toggle on and off, then at least it'll buy some time, see if I can find a replacement for it. You can see the contact here is all pitted away from years of sparking when it was turned on and off. But if we can clean that contact up, it might work for a while. This piece just sits in here like this. Just sits in there like that. And when you turn it on and off, the spring pushes it up one way or releases it back the other. So normally this piece sits in like this. So the toggle is inside here, like that, and the spring sits on here and it pushes it back and forth. So if I set the spring on there, try not to drop this thing while I'm doing it, because I might not be so lucky to catch it the next time it flies out, but the spring sits in there like that, and then the top part of the switch sits in there like that, and it's held together with these clips. Well, it's toggling. Let's just see if it turns it on and off. It's going to squeeze the clips a little tighter. It's on and it's off. On, off. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I think I fixed it. At least for now, until it breaks again, but that'll hold it for a while, I'm pretty sure. So I'll remount the switch. It's not that difficult to change. You're going to pull the faceplate off to do it, but it's getting the replacement switch. That's going to be the fun part, is finding finding a switch of this particular style. Would be the difficult part. Lots of toggle switches around. It's just one that's going to fit this is going to be, I would think, tough to find. I might be wrong, but I just don't anticipate them being easy to source. So if we don't have to source a switch, then we don't source a switch. I fixed the one on my Akai test amplifier that I use here in the shop. I fixed that one a few years ago. It was the same, but it was arcing. It wouldn't turn on. It was actually arcing. Switch seems to be working okay. I think this one's almost done. I gotta put some lights in here. Now these are incandescent bulbs. I don't have any incandescent bulbs, so I'm going to see what type they are. I think they're just they're like dashboard lights on this. I think they're 12 volts. I'll have to take a look and see. This is the diffuser that the lights are in. So yes, it's got 4 incandescent bulbs. We'll measure the voltage on here and see what it is, whether it's 12 volts or whether it's 8 volts. More likely AC voltage, so let's just put the meter on. Turn the unit on and measure the voltage. It is 6-volt bulbs. I'm gonna probably, I don't know if I can get bulbs this size. Are they screw in or are they push in? Oh, yeah, they're broken. That's what they are. Looks like they got a green coating on them too, to make them a green color, which is going to be fun. You can use green nail polish, like transparent, like nail polish, to give them that green hue. Let's see if they screw in or whether they're bayonet or plug-in bulbs. I was thinking Christmas lights. I can maybe get some Christmas bulbs. Okay, they're bayonet. They're bayonet bulbs. Just want to see what the rating on them is. So because I don't feel like ordering in bulbs, and I don't feel like going and driving down to the big city next week and picking some bulbs up, because everything's closed now, right? Even if I could get them. I went and got myself some Christmas bulbs. These are 3.5 volt bulbs, so we're going to put 2 of them in series. That'll give me 7 volts. So it's a 6-volt circuit. 7 volts will be just about right, so that they won't be too bright, and that they will actually last a reasonable amount of time, I hope. So we're going to wire these up in series and maybe even put them in the original sockets, stick them back in there. So let's do it. So I'll start by soldering the wires together to make 1 bulb out of 2. And what I've done is I've put some heat shrink tubing around where the one wire connects to the other one, and I'm going to put this into the original bulb holder and solder it in place. Now that the bulb is in place, it'll light up and look just like an original incandescent bulb. I'm going to do the same for the remaining 4 bulbs, and we'll see how this looks once I'm done. These actually unplug, so you don't even have to take the bracket off. These will actually unplug directly. I can just take the bulbs out. And replace the actual glass with new bulbs. They should look like the originals. Okay, there are the bulbs installed. Let's see how it lights up the front face. I haven't got the top on it yet, obviously, but there it is. Okay, here's how the receiver looks. I haven't finished yet. I just kind of stuck the top on it to look at it. Turn out the lights. So you can see the display all lighting up. It's nice and evenly lit. Yeah, looks nice. Well, there it is. All back together. Oops. All back together. Sounding good. All the controls are working like they're supposed to. And the display is lit with incandescent lights. Looks like it did when it was new. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye.